if we have that leaky gut where bacteria is going to get through into the bloodstream, it can actually travel to the spinal column, and those blood vessels travel into the discs in between the spine. And then we get movement, and that can make a prolapsed disc. Dachshunds who have lots of GI issues, lots of endocrine skin issues, also have that mechanical long body where they're prone to this. There's lots of ways that we go in and say, oh, my pet's got a bad back. That has nothing to do with his guts. We need to start making those connections.
Welcome to another episode of the Pause and Effect podcast, where we explore the many facets of veterinary care to help give your pets the healthiest lives possible. I'm Dr. Kara, your host, and today we're exploring a fascinating and evolving area of pet health, the microbiome of dogs and cats. My guest is Robin Saar, a leading expert and author of Small Animal Microbiomes and Nutrition, a comprehensive resource that sheds light on the vital role of microbiomes in preventing and treating common health conditions. Robin will be walking us through how the balance of microbiomes impacts your pet's overall health, why nutrition can sometimes be a first-line solution, and how understanding the microbiome can lead to better, less invasive treatments. If you've ever wondered about the connection between your pet's diet and their health, or why their gut health matters so much, this episode is a must listen. Welcome, Robin. You are now, you can call yourself an author of not just a book, a textbook, which is brilliant. Wow.
Something.
Hey?
Yeah. So yes, my name is Robin Saar. I'm actually a veterinary nurse in Alberta, Canada. And I've been a vet nurse since the 1900s and worked mostly in small and mixed animal practices, and then wanted to elevate myself more in my education more. And it's very limited for us unless we go back to school and do things. And that's where I actually learned about a specialty for veterinary nurses in nutrition. So in 2019, I completed that, and that just started my passion for nutrition, because you learn that, of course, it's not just, eating and taking in calories, but it's actually about health everywhere. And so that's where I met you, is that in our master's program through the University of Glasgow. I'm now doing my master's in animal nutrition. I currently work for Royal Canin, Canada. So get to do all my favorite things: educating about nutrition, developing new tools to help with nutrition, talking about nutrition, but also elevating other veterinary nurses to show them that this isn't just a stepping stone in your life, that this is a career. And how do we make it a career? How do we advocate for ourselves? How do we advocate for our pets? Talking to pet parents, making them understand, kind of like today conversations, why their recommendation for nutrition isn't just about selling food, it's about making lives better for pets. So that's kind of my little gist of me. And I did write a textbook. I thought, well, this will be fun. Let's just write a textbook.
How many people find writing a textbook fun? It's like a labor of love.
Oh my gosh. It is. I really think that when you write a textbook, it's because you want to learn more, right? So that's what it was for me. Is I was doing my specialty in nutrition, and I kept finding, as I was reading through papers and looking up different things, I kept finding all this talk about the gut microbiome. So all these microbes that live in the gut. And I was like, well, what is this? How come we never learned about this? Like, I knew there were microbes living in the intestine.
Yeah.
And I knew if a dog got diarrhea, that meant there was an imbalance. We had to give antibiotics, wipe them out, let them start again, and everything's happy. And as I'm reading these papers, I'm like, oh, maybe that's not true. Oh, maybe they do more than what we thought. And so that was really where the passion for the textbook came from. Was I really felt that veterinary professionals, and of course in my case focused on veterinary nurses, but understanding how nutrition is so important in not just nourishing and providing calories, but also in feeding and controlling what's going on in our gut microbiome, or in the area where all these bacteria live in our guts, so that they could better explain to clients why doing a certain diet change is maybe beneficial or detrimental. Why maybe not giving antibiotics just because the pet had a little bit of diarrhea that's maybe not what we want to do. So that's really where that came from. So that self-learning journey
I love
that you
it.
then get to share with everyone else.
Well, congratulations.
So yeah.
I'm so impressed and absolutely in awe. and
Oh goodness.
and I mean, you really cover it from explaining what the microbiome is to how it can be manipulated, and even managing health conditions in our pets that ordinarily we would have been reaching for the pharmaceuticals for, that can now be managed with diet alone, or certainly with support of the diet. So let's provide that clarification for the listeners. What are we talking about? What is a microbiome for people who are going, I have no idea what this podcast is about. I didn't even know a biome. Let's clarify the term.
Yeah. As I was talking there, I'm like, Robin, you have jumped the gun on this.
Love it.
So we do know, of course, right, that bacteria are everywhere. I think we forget about them sometimes because they're microscopic, and it's easy not to think about things when they're invisible. We know, of course, that we hear about bacteria more when we think of the negative sense, right? We think about C. diff, we think about E. coli, but there's a lot of bacteria that are really beneficial. And it's having a variety of bacteria that we want. And like I said, bacteria are everywhere. And they exist kind of like we do on the earth in little communities or environments or biomes. And one of the most important biomes that we're learning about is in the large intestine. And so it is just an area in the large intestine where we have bacteria that live and they stay there and they do certain functions. And so one of the biggest functions is, we know when we eat, we don't digest all of our food 100%, right? Like everybody poops, it's a book, it's true. So our upper GI system will try really hard to digest food, absorb those nutrients, but what doesn't get absorbed goes down into our large intestine. And that's where this biome, or this collection of a bunch of different organisms. So I'm focusing on bacteria, but there are viruses that live there and don't cause harm. There are protozoa, there's archaea, which is kind of a different, not a form of bacteria, but kind of in that phylum, that chart we have of living organisms. But there's lots of these different organisms that all live there and live harmoniously. And they will take those nutrients, and they've developed ways to break down those nutrients. And when they break down nutrients, it's mostly just a chemical reaction. Everything is chemistry, I learned. So I'm really glad I took it in high school. So when they do that, those chemicals they produce have different functions or things they do. So they might provide energy. That energy is for those bacteria or for those different organisms. It might be for the cells that are in the GI tract. They might provide little neurotransmitters, so things that help us communicate with our central nervous system. So it affects our nervous system. Lots of different things are made. And so that's why this biome is really important, because all of those different little chemicals, and we call them metabolites, are made. They can then work in the gut, but also travel through into the bloodstream and go everywhere in the body. So feeding the brain, affecting the heart, affecting the liver, affecting the kidney. It can affect everywhere the blood goes. So everywhere, affecting the skin. So we're learning how this particular biome is so important, because it doesn't just affect the gut, it affects the entire health of the body.
Amazing.
That was probably way longer of an answer than you wanted.
No, that's great. And I mean,
but yeah, hopefully that kind of makes sense why this one's so important.
Absolutely. But we've got these all over. We've got a skin biome. We've got a mouth. I mean, so this can be applied, and obviously nutrition can impact those organs as much as the gut. And so, I mean, this is ever evolving and a really fascinating area of research, isn't it?
It is. And I love that you say that, ever evolving, because I think if they take away anything, anyone listening to this, the biggest thing to remember is that science is ever evolving. And so even if we have proved something yesterday, a year ago, 10 years ago, we're improving our techniques to learn more, which means we may be able to prove something new, or we may be understanding something new. So just because we knew something yesterday doesn't mean it's that we're not going to do better tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So really pay attention to new science that comes in with facts behind it so that we can evolve how we take care of our pets, because we all want them to live longer.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kara, a veterinarian and the host of the Pause and Effect podcast. Our show is all about enhancing the lives of pets by providing reliable, science-based advice and engaging in discussions with experts in veterinary medicine, pet nutrition, and animal behavior. As a professional with years of experience in both the UK and South Africa, I run a 24-hour veterinary hospital and an online pet store. I'm also pursuing a master's in animal nutrition and consult for UltraPet, a local veterinary-grade pet food manufacturer. My passion lies in sharing knowledge and helping pet owners make informed decisions about their pet companions. The Pause and Effect podcast is rapidly growing, attracting a dedicated, engaging audience of pet owners who are passionate about their pets' health and well-being. Our listeners trust us for credible, informative content that empowers them to provide the best care for their animals. We are looking for sponsors who share our commitment to pet health and who want to reach a highly engaged and expanding audience. Partnering with us means aligning your brand with trusted and influential content that resonates deeply with pet owners. As a sponsor, you'll benefit from high visibility on a platform that is used for multiple purposes, including educational content, product recommendations, and community building. We offer various sponsorship packages designed to fit your marketing goals and budget, ensuring that your brand gets the reach and the impact it deserves. Join us in making a difference in the lives of pets and their families. Let's work together to bring valuable insights and quality products to our passionate audience. If you're interested in sponsoring the Pause and Effect podcast, please get in touch. I look forward to partnering with you. Before we resume our conversation, let's address a vital aspect to pet care, your puppy's nutrition. Allow me to introduce you to a personal favorite, UltraPet's premium recipe for large breed puppies. I've relied on this for all my dogs, and it's truly made a difference. This puppy food offers a balanced blend of nutrients, with 30% protein, 15% fat, and 4% fiber, supporting your companion's growth and development. Featuring a delectable chicken and rice flavor, UltraPet caters for even the pickiest eaters. It's available in 2 pack sizes, a 8 kg and a 20 kg, and it's suitable for households of any size. What sets this puppy food apart is its meticulous formulation, developed by experts for a complete and balanced diet. It includes essential vitamins and minerals and prebiotics for a healthy digestive system and a robust immune system. With high-quality protein sources and essential fatty acids, this food promotes muscle development, healthy skin and coat. Plus calcium and phosphorus strengthen bones and teeth. UltraPet has mastered the balance between nutrition and taste, making it a top choice for puppy food. Find it at your local pet store and give it to your companion for the best start. Your pet will thank you, and you'll appreciate UltraPet's commitment to optimal nutrition. Now, let's get back to our conversation. So let's get right into it, and let's talk about what happens and the term dysbiosis. What does that mean, and why is that relevant for our pets?
Yeah, you bet. So I talked about, we have a bunch of different organisms. So in the gut microbiome, they're estimating there's approximately 100 trillion different of these little microorganisms living there. And we want this large variety of them. We don't want any one taking over, any one type. So if we do see that, if we see that there is one type taking over, or if we see maybe we've lost some of these really important ones that are helping to break down and digest some of the food that reaches it, then we can see what we call a dysbiosis. So a dysbiosis is going to be an imbalance from normal, which normal is going to be, we're going to say for general sakes, a variety of a lot of different organisms. And when we see that dysbiosis or that imbalance from normal, we usually are able to associate that with a health condition. Now, what comes first, the dysbiosis or the health condition? We don't 100% know. And I think that the answer to that is that it's not the same for every disease, because we have lots of other factors that will affect that, genetics, nutrition. So imagine if we have all of those normal organisms there and we're eating a healthy, balanced diet. We're going to feed a variety of different organisms. We're going to do normal functions. But if we have a dysbiosis, so maybe we're missing the bacteria, let's say, that really likes to digest protein. And that one isn't really there. And when it digests protein, it makes a chemical that helps with inflammation. Let's just say that's more fiber, but we'll just go with protein because that's what I said. So if we're missing that bacteria, then our body isn't really able to digest the protein. Or we have this other bacteria or organism that's overgrown. Now it's digesting the bacteria. It makes a different chemical. And maybe that chemical or metabolite isn't as beneficial for health. So then we see health decline. So nutrition and balanced nutrition is really important, because if we provide too much is never good, right? If we put too much soap in the sink, we get too many bubbles, everything's sticky, it's not good. More is not better. We want the balance. So a balanced diet is really important so that we get balanced chemicals or metabolites. And if we have a dysbiosis, nutrition is important because we want to feed and try to get back those bacteria that aren't really doing as well. It's not that they're maybe totally gone. It's just that there's not really maybe enough of them to produce those health benefits.
Okay.
So dysbiosis usually, again, is going to be related to poor health. And I don't know if I explained that very well.
No, absolutely. No, you did. And so can owners, when do we get these situations of dysbiosis? Is it during disease processes, or is it due to bad nutrition, or is it just a genetic sort of predisposition to it? How do owners know maybe some of the signs that they will notice that their pets have got a problem?
Yeah, I love that. And that's a huge question.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
like you
I'm
said, it's
throwing
all of the things. You're good. It is all of the things. So
Okay.
it's not just one thing. There's a lot of factors that can change the microbiome, or what's in the microbiome, or cause a dysbiosis. So the birthing process can make a difference. Nutrition can make a difference. Antimicrobials can make a difference. Genetics, of course, are going to play a role. So let's focus on what I think are two of the big ones that we have control of. So antimicrobials. And antimicrobials, of course, are meant to kill bacteria. And so there's a lot of, I'm not saying antimicrobials are bad, because if you need antibiotics, they save lives, right? If our pets need antibiotics, they save lives. But what we have to think about is that how we're using them and when we're using them. And for example, in humans, this study, I just love these studies. I have a sister with Crohn's and colitis. And of course, you always wonder, like, why did she get it? I didn't get it. And they really have in the human side found a correlation between Crohn's and colitis and children at a young age getting antibiotics, particularly children with ear infections. And my sister had ear infections all the time. And what it is that when we're young and growing, and our pets are young and growing, that microbiome is still developing and growing, right? So they're going to get exposures of those first bacteria after, during, and after birthing. That's when we're going to get all these different environment, our environment, their environment, bacteria getting in and start establishing what's normal for that pet. And so it's changing and changing while that animal's growing. So if we give them antibiotics, then that can change that state. And the problem with ear infections is it's never just usually once, right? Children with ear infections, it's usually repetitive therapy. So one paper in particular looked at over 1 million people, and they actually developed a risk ratio. So if you were under 1 year of age and you had antibiotics once, you had, I think it's like a 5.5 risk ratio of getting Crohn's colitis as an adult. By the time you were 5, it decreased in half. By the time you were 15, it went down in half again. But if every time you got antibiotics a second or third or fourth time, your risk ratio increased by like 6%.
Wow.
So they are finding that particularly during that growth time, antibiotics can cause damage way later in life. And so when we have our pets come in, like when you take your pet, none of us are asking, well, did this puppy have antibiotics when he was 3 months old? Like nobody's thinking of that right now. But that is something we can start thinking about, is that correlation to antibiotics. That being said, again, antibiotics are very important. They are life-saving. But if your pet has diarrhea, do we need to go to antibiotics? And that's where nutrition comes in. because nutrition, as you know, is very amazing, and it can cause very quick changes in that gut microbiome because, as I mentioned, bacteria have kind of preferences of what nutrients they like. So if I eat a high fiber diet, the bacteria that love cellulose that my body can't break down, and they make these wonderful metabolites called short chain fatty acids, they flourish, and we see an improvement in health. If we switch to go to a low fiber diet, then those bacteria are going to change. And so we can make changes really quickly by altering our nutrition. And for me, it's not about one nutrition. Like, I'm not going to say high fiber is best for everyone, because of course it's not great for our growing puppies. They need a lot of protein and a lot of energy, but it's about complete and balanced nutrition. Because again, we have to remember we're feeding lots of different types of bacteria. So we have to make sure that our nutrition is balanced so that we feed all of those different types of bacteria and organisms that are in that gut microbiome.
Absolutely. And remembering, obviously, for pet owners, they tend to feed the same food, generally, hopefully, twice a day, because I think it's cruel to feed once a day, but twice a day.
Agreed.
Longer term. So, we're not altering, and we do not encourage owners to alter the diet like we do as owners.
Yeah.
So, if there is a deficiency, those deficiencies will show up very, very quickly. And I think that's, we see it because we see their little condensed lives. But we also see, like you say, the changes if, say, we do have a dog with a vomiting or diarrhea, the impact of an intestinal type diet on managing that condition very quickly. So absolutely, we see it sort of in practice, which is lovely. So in terms of owners wanting to do the best for their pets, and I don't know about where you live, but there's a lot out there, and there's so many conflicting views on what the adequate diet. I mean, you talk about balanced nutrition. Explain to owners how they make the selection on what diet to put their pets on. What sort of ingredients should they be looking? How do they read the back of the pack and establish the right nutrition for their pet?
Yeah. So for me, balanced nutrition is going to be my first goal. So complete and balanced. And what that means is that we are utilizing a formulation or a recipe, let's say, that has been, first off, created by a board certified veterinary nutritionist and or a PhD animal nutritionist. And I say formula or recipe, and that to me, that includes the kibble and canned foods that we buy, because those do start as a recipe, right? So for me, that's very important that that's where those recipes are coming from, because not only do they understand how much protein or fat or carbohydrates a pet needs, they understand that not every pet is the same, right? We can't put all of our adult dogs the same, because a Chihuahua is definitely different than a Great Dane. Their needs are different. Their metabolism's different. So I want to ensure that my food for my pet is coming from someone who understands those small little differences that are between our pets. And like you mentioned, our pets aren't around for as long as us, so we don't have as much time to fix our mistakes. So for me, feeding that diet that is complete and balanced in our macronutrients, so our protein, fat, carbohydrates, but also in those micronutrients, so our minerals and our vitamins. Really important to have those balanced. Then when I think about diet, for me, I really like to know that when I am feeding my pet, I feel safe knowing that someone has tested the ingredients beforehand, the ingredients after they've been through and manufactured, and that they're following up with safety type of things. So I am a kibble canned food person who likes to feed my pet those things. And I like to utilize companies that I know are also involved in research and are keeping up on what's going on with pets. So they're not focused on the fads that are happening. They're focused on what is best for this pet and what is science showing us. Because like I mentioned, science changes. So we need to make sure that our food evolves with our pets. There are lots of diet opportunities. So there are people that we have fresh foods that are commercial, or you can do a homemade recipe. There are raw diets, same thing, commercial or recipe. Personally, I think that fresh ingredients always provide a bigger amount of nutrients and things like that. But I think unless we're really measuring them, I think there's always more room for us to miss. So I think the biggest thing, though, again, goes back to using that balanced recipe that you're going to get from a board certified veterinary nutritionist. So not just a vet nutritionist or someone that calls himself a nutritionist, but a board certified veterinary nutritionist, or sites like balance.it, where you can get recipes where all the recipes have been assessed by multiple board certified veterinary nutritionists and PhD animal nutritionists. So for me, that's the safest. If you're going to feed a homemade, raw, or even a kibble canned food, you really have to think about safety things. So how are we storing the food? Are we keeping dishes clean? I think all of those things are the same. Some have higher risk factors, like our raw foods are going to have much higher risk factors compared to our kibble food, right? So I think it's a personal choice. I personally am a kibble feeder, but complete and balanced nutrition, and find out what that means for your region, because it's not the same across the world. So make sure in your country that you understand how pet food is regulated.
Absolutely. That's great advice. So in terms of going back to our microbiome, there are some terms that I think would be really beneficial for our listeners for you to unpack, and that is the pre, the pro, and the postbiotics. What are these, and where do these fit into managing or developing a healthy microbiome?
You bet. All right. Well, let's start with the pre.
Yeah.
So a prebiotic is really a food for bacteria in the gut. So this will be a food form that our bodies are not going to, or our pets' bodies are not going to digest and break down. And so generally that's a fiber, right? A fiber source. We do not have the enzymes to break down fiber. Fiber for us has other functions, right? It's going to slow down our GI tract. It's going to maybe absorb fluid, bulk up stool, and it's going to help feed some of the bacteria in the gut microbiome. Prebiotics tend not to be big hunks. Like when I think about cellulose fiber, I'm thinking like big hunks of, fiber food. And it's not like that. It's usually smaller fibers. But that's what our prebiotic is. So we're going to be providing fiber sources to those bacteria to help them thrive. When we look at probiotics, probably most people have heard of probiotics. These are live organisms that are supposed to convey a health benefit to the host. So when you give them, they're supposed to improve the health of that host. So they go into the gut microbiome and they do a function that bacteria would maybe do in a balanced gut. So maybe they're going to help bring down inflammation. Maybe they're going to try to help outcompete some of those bacteria that we don't want there, that are creating that dysbiosis or imbalance. The main thing about probiotics is they're not supposed to stay. So I mentioned we have bacteria that stay in the gut. They kind of live in a outer mucus layer in that large intestine, and they stay there. Probiotics are not supposed to stay there technically. They're supposed to go in, do a job, and leave. So if you quit giving probiotics, then that should leave the system and the body should hopefully maybe get back to normal. Then we have those postbiotics. And postbiotics are similar to me to the metabolites or those chemicals that the bacteria are making in the large intestine. So what I like to think about is, let's say we have that dysbiosis where we have a bacteria that is overgrowing, it's outcompeting a bacteria that helps keep inflammation down. And so we're not producing enough chemical that brings down inflammation. And so maybe the skin is getting all red. So for me, like with eczema, maybe I have eczema flare up because I have that bacteria that's going to help keep my eczema under control isn't there enough. If I give a postbiotic, which is going to be maybe that same chemical or a similar type of anti-inflammatory chemical or metabolite made in a lab, if I take that as a food form, that is going to help work in the same way. So it's making those metabolites in a lab and having them as a food form. So it kind of can help do what the gut isn't doing when we're in a state of dysbiosis or imbalance.
That's brilliant. I love that explanation. Very clear. So, how have you found, particularly in the work that you're doing now, nutrition can help, like you're saying, there's the skin issues. How are you finding, perhaps you can give us another couple of examples, the way in which you can modify your pet's nutrition in order to get a clinical outcome?
You bet. So skin disease is multifactorial. So there's usually lots of things going on. The skin itself has its own kind of barrier, as we know, right? We have that epidermis layer, and that's protecting the body from those outer layers. But interestingly, in the guts, we have a similar type of thing. We have a row of cells, we have some mucus that's protecting those contents that are going through the intestine from killing cells and getting into the body. And in the large intestine, we do find that if we don't keep that barrier very healthy, that a lot of the chemicals that are being produced, and like inflammatory type chemicals, because imagine, right, if we don't have that barrier staying nice and healthy, then those contents are going to start touching cells and we're going to get inflammation in the gut. Well, all those inflammation chemicals can go and travel to the skin and cause inflammation kind of from the inside out. So we can have outside in and we can have inside out going on. So if we can ensure that our nutrition can help to rebalance the gut and improve that barrier. So I'll give you an example. As I mentioned, we have those cells and we have some mucus in the large intestine that's protecting the contents of lumen. And fiber feeds really beneficial bacteria that make short-chain fatty acids. And short-chain fatty acids feed those cells that line the GI tract. And it's those cells that also, some of them, make mucus that help protect the cells from all the lumen contents. So by feeding some fiber types, we can get those short-chain fatty acids made. The bacteria can also use that as energy, reproduce, repopulate. We can feed the cells, which can heal and produce mucus, which can protect the gut, which then can also prevent all those inflammatory cells from traveling to the skin, causing inflammation from the inside out. So that's one way. The other way we have is that some of our ingredients that we use in our therapeutic type diets can really help, again, naturally bring down inflammation in other ways. So we have omega-3 fatty acids, which are great natural anti-inflammatories. And we even have some new ingredients coming out, black licorice root, which is showing in some studies to bring down skin inflammation. And when we don't have inflammation, we can have healing. So we have lots of new and interesting ways that we can use nutrition to help with some natural healing. And we may need to do other things as well, but that's why using some of these therapeutic line diets, for me is kind of an easy way and it makes sense way to help heal our pets and see if we can use that as a first line defense before jumping to some of those other therapies, or using in conjunction and then seeing if we can decrease the dose on some of those other therapies that definitely are necessary in some cases.
Brilliant. Love those examples. Tell us a little bit more about the gut-brain axis, because that's something else that owners always are reading about, particularly in human sort of examples. Can you explain that for our listeners, please?
Yeah, you bet. And so we know, of course, that when we think about the brain, that the nervous system is more than just the brain, right? We have a spinal cord, we have nerves that go throughout the whole body, and we also have a connection, an enteric nervous system. So we even have a nervous system in our guts. And I always just thought of that, well, that just controls the contractions, right? Like Robin, who's a bit anxious, thinks about, oh, I have to go do this podcast today. I'm kind of anxious about it. What happens? My guts start to cramp, right? Because my body's saying, ooh, you're going to have to fight or flight because something is happening to you today. But the gut also talks to the brain. So again, I mentioned before, those little chemicals that are made can also communicate to that ENS, or that enteric nervous system, can talk to the central nervous system. So your brain and your spinal cord, and say, hey, we got an imbalance here. Can you do this? Can you fix that? And those chemicals can also travel to the brain and affect anxiety levels. We're finding them connected to different type of neurological disorders, autism, cognitive dysfunction. We're really finding those types of connections. And people may have heard of this a lot more. We even have a probiotic on the market. So again, that live bacteria that we give to our pets that produces a chemical that over time helps the pet lessen their anxiety, right? It's going to go to the brain. It's going to fill that. Some of the chemicals we produce are like serotonin. So actual neurological chemicals that affect the brain. The thing that I recently learned about that I find extra exciting is that we even have a connection to pain and maybe other disorders we didn't think about. So remember I talked about how we have the intestine, and how if it's not healthy, then we can have a lot of those chemicals and even sometimes the bacteria going in between the cells and getting into the blood system and traveling. And so people may have heard of leaky gut, or, bacteria translocation, where bacteria goes from the gut and goes to other areas in the body. Well, that central nervous system along your spine has a different immune response. Because imagine if you got an infection somewhere in your body and your spinal cord got all inflamed, that's not good, right? So your body has a different way of monitoring things. So it's a little bit slower working than the rest of our body. And if we have that leaky gut where we don't have a healthy gut, and bacteria is going to get through into the bloodstream, it can actually travel to the spinal column, and it attaches to the bones in your spinal column or in the pet's spinal column. And there it sets up its own little almost biome. And it creates chemicals that are really inflammatory. So we get inflammation, which makes blood vessels, and those blood vessels travel into the discs in between the spine. And that weakens those discs. And then we get movement, and that can make a prolapse disc.
Wow.
So for me, this was a light bulb moment. Husband with celiac, not diagnosed for years, who also had 3 slipped discs. And he's a big, strong man. It made no sense. But then I think about Dachshunds.
Yeah.
Dachshunds who have lots of GI issues, lots of endocrine skin issues, also have that mechanical long body where they're prone to this. Is this something that we've been missing? So I think that there's lots of ways that we go in and say, oh, my pet's got a bad back. That has nothing to do with his guts. We need to start making those connections that my pet's anxious. Is there something going on with his gut? Can diet help? What can we do to help make this better? So many connections. So I jumped off maybe a little from where you wanted to go.
No, I love that.
I just
wow,
find
you taught
that
me
so
something really
interesting.
Fascinating.
So
I love it.
Yeah.
So, this is just such a great example of the development in nutrition, and the opportunities that we have, and how quickly, like you say, how quickly we're advancing in our ability to be able to manage conditions, but just, learn. You spoke about autism. If we could manage and we understand the importance of early nutrition and managing nutrition early on, how many things we can prevent going forward. And I think, it's particularly with our pets where, like we said, they've got those little condensed lives and we only got them for a short time. We do see those things, and we are able to not test. I don't mean guinea pig type test them, but we are able to test nutrition in our own pets, which is great, and modify so many of these disease processes. This is also why I just love nutrition, because there's so many areas that you can manipulate in a positive way, and see phenomenal results. So, even down to that behavioral modification, some of the diets now that are for stressed animals, and you can't, I don't think owners necessarily have conceived before how that works. So thank you very much. That's very interesting. So let's go to some of we spoke before we went officially on air. We spoke about your potential dissertation type project in the final year of the masters. I mean, one of the big things, and I think we're both interested in it, is renal disease. So talk about how we manage diets for one of these kind of clinical cases, and why the renal diets are of particular interest.
Yeah, renal disease is, I'll admit, I think that liver and renal are the two classes I probably slept through when I was in tech school. They seem so boring, but now they are so interesting, how much effect they have on the body. And renal disease, and we'll focus, of course, I'm assuming on cats, because it affects so many cats, is really completely controlled by nutrition, right? We can increase or decrease their longevity or how long they're with us just by the nutrition. And what I also find interesting is that we're learning more about how if a pet has renal disease, that there's different stages in it. So just because your pet has been diagnosed with renal disease doesn't mean that that's the end of life, because we have really distinct stages and we know exactly how we should feed them in each distinct stage. And sometimes by jumping the gun and thinking, well, you know what? I know we're in an early stage 1 out of 4, but I'm going to jump to what we would do in stage 4 because I think that'll make it better. Sometimes that can make it worse. So that actually, it's interesting how more again isn't better. If sometimes we over restrict and put them on a stage 4 renal diet, we can actually see their calcium go really high and they can have high calcemia. So what we have a pet with renal disease, we really can start off by saying, well, we know that phosphorus is really going to make the kidneys function decrease quicker. And that doesn't mean we necessarily have to reduce our protein all at once. It means that we need a reduction in phosphorus. So of course you can see this is where those therapeutic diets really can come in handy. And there are lots of different diets, depending on which company, that can offer a lower phosphorus level in that food. So that's when your veterinarian or talking to the different companies can really help say, well, with my pet, and being a senior pet, sometimes it's not just one disease, sometimes they have
multiple,
2 or 3.
Yeah.
So multiple things going on. So how can we best find a diet that's going to help my pet with all of their conditions? So wonderful thing again with therapeutic diets is we usually can find something. And then we can move into stage 2, which is quite similar, but maybe we start watching them. And then as we get into stage 3 and 4, then we're going to be looking at using those full renal support diets, which are going to moderate more of our calcium, our phosphorus, our protein. And then we also have other things that we can use if those diets aren't working enough. What's interesting though, too, is there are other ingredients besides just phosphorus and protein. There's those omega-3 fatty acids to help bring down inflammation. We have to think about the fact that when a pet has an illness, they go through what's called cachexia. And it really is, call it a derangement, but it's when the metabolism kind of goes wonky. So normally if you don't eat and you starve yourself, or you're in a starvation, or your pet's in a starvation situation, your body says, let's slow down your metabolism and let's use the fat, because that's great energy, and keep you alive, right? And it tries to save the muscle because you still got to walk, right? In case you can find food. But when you have illness starvation or an illness with it, it's called cachexia, which took me a year to learn how to pronounce, by the way. It tells your brain, you know what, you're not hungry, don't eat. You can kind of get nauseous if in a kidney pet from the buildup of all those bad chemicals that the kidneys aren't filtering out as well as they used to. It speeds up metabolism. It's supposed to slow it down, but it doesn't. It speeds it up. And then we also see the pet not wanting to eat, and the body doesn't absorb very well. So even if you get food in, it doesn't absorb well. So that's why using these specialized diets for these renal pets is really important. They're very tasty. They're really calorically dense, so they can eat just a little bit, but get a lot of calories and still get all those extra nutrients that are going to help them feel better and get inflammation out.
ultimately try and extend their lives, which is wonderful.
Try extend their
Absolutely.
lives. Yeah.
I mean, I know we're running out of time because we're getting that signal. But I hope that at some point we can discuss some more of these, particularly the prescription-based diets, because there is just so much benefit from the joint diets to, like you said, the liver diets and the weight diets. And we're seeing so many obese patients because owners are just over-loving their pets. And again, like you said, the more isn't better. It's actually harmful.
Isn't better.
But there are
I'd like to say more chocolate is better, but it's not either. I tried,
no.
but it's just not.
Absolutely. So there are just so many opportunities. And I think you and I could talk for days and days about nutrition and you're so knowledgeable. It's wonderful to discuss these kind of cases. And I too, I think, even some of the work that you were doing before and some of the information you provide in your textbook, it is fascinating. Just some of the things that we are just not even aware of, or are becoming aware of, that we can do for our pets through great nutrition, good quality ingredients, and then managing that biome, which is ultimately, like you say, you can't see it, but the results you certainly can. So really, really fascinating subject. And thank you for giving us a good overview of it, and some great case examples. It's been so lovely talking to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you letting me go on and on and on about my favorite
I love it. No, well, me too. If it wasn't for the producer waving at me, I would keep you here for ages. But I think if you've been comfortable, I'd rather say let's do another at some point when you've got some time. Also know that your schedule is very busy. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to chat with us.
That's amazing. Thanks you so
Robin.
much. I appreciate you.
Okay. All the best of the course. And I'm sure I'll see you online at some
You
point.
too.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation about gut health with expert guest Robin Saar. We hope this episode has given you a deeper understanding of how microbiomes play a crucial role in your pet's health and how nutrition can be a powerful tool in prevention and treatment. If you have found this episode informative, don't forget to share it with other pet owners, subscribe to the Pause and Effect podcast, and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue bringing valuable insights to keep your pets healthy. Until next time, keep learning and caring for your pets in the best ways possible. But most importantly, please don't forget to give them a big hug from me. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Cara.
Hello, Doctor. It's Chanel the Persian. And, I can't seem to stop retching to get this hairball up.
Are you on a special diet?
Excuse me?
Hairball control food will really help. And maybe some Laxapet. And lucky for you, Just for Pets have a big range.
Well, how early can I get some?
Order today and we'll deliver pronto.
Wow, I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Get it all to your door.